Welcome to the Growth and Banter podcast. My name is Blake McCullough, CEO and founder of GMS Media Group, one of Australia's leading digital advertising agencies. This podcast is for anyone looking to learn the insights and strategies of industry leaders and how to build a successful life. Today, we're joined by Sam Gordon from Australian Property Scout and School of Property, and he's going to teach his strategies of how he amassed 130 properties and his strategies of building a property portfolio. Welcome, Sam.
Blake, mate, absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yep, no, my pleasure too. Mate, we've been working together for, it's about a year now, I think. And you've got two businesses, Australian Property Scout and School of Property.
Yes.
You've amassed over what now is around 130 properties. You started in your early 20s and you're still at a young age of 34, I believe.
Yep.
Mate, you've done a lot in such a short period of time. So I would love to peel back the layers and just get a bit of a feel for how you first got into property and how you've been able to amass such a large portfolio at such a young age.
Yeah, man. So look, it all started probably back in my teens, man, or even younger than that, mate. So I grew up on a farm down the Southern Highlands. It was a small little rabbit farm, and I used to see my parents like working like dogs every day of the week, 7 days a week, every week. And yeah, man, I realized like I didn't really want that for myself. Like I didn't mind working hard, and I used to help from a very young age as well. So I got that work ethic built into me. But I think as I started getting into my teens, I really realized that I didn't want to just be slaving away like I saw them do, for so many years.
Yeah.
And then, man, literally what got me sort of bitten by the bug initially was I read an article on Harry Triguboff. And I think at the time, like obviously the founder director of Meriton. And man, I think at the time he had like 3,000 apartments. He was worth about $5 billion. And I was like, who is this guy? Like, what the hell? What do you mean? Like, how is that possible? And it got me thinking about it, man. And then, man, I'm a high school dropout. So I left school like I was literally fresh 16, mate. I turned 16 like a month earlier. Dropped out of high school when I went to HSC years because I was living in the Highlands, but I was commuting to Sydney. I was commuting to Fairfield for sports. I went to Westfield Sports for soccer. Yeah. It was 2.5 hours on the train each way every day.
Fuck.
And man, just with HSC workload on top, I was like, fuck this. Like it was just too much.
Yeah.
Left, started work the next day. And then over 3 years, I started building a deposit together, and I was looking towards cars, like funnily enough, because my dad was a mechanic by trade.
Yeah, right.
And this was in the Fast and Furious era, you know what I mean? Like in the early 2000s.
My dad was a panel beater, so similar.
There you go, man. There you go. And man, so I wanted to get myself a Toyota Supra because that was my favorite car out of Fast and Furious, the OG, like number one. Yeah. And then yeah, man, I kept taking the old boy to inspections, and being a mechanic, I was like, oh yeah, I trust his advice. He just kept like shit canning every single one. Yeah. And then one day we were driving home from one of these car inspections. He said to me, mate, why don't you just buy a house? Like just go buy a unit, go buy a house, something like that. Like go put your money into something else.
Smarter investment.
Yeah, yeah. Instead of a money pit. And mate, that was kind of it. And then I kind of, it triggered me back thinking about Harry Triguboff again that I'd read obviously a few years earlier. And then I started looking into it. And then, yeah, man, I made the decision to buy my first place, and I bought it at 19. So I bought the first deal at 19. And it's a funny story because it was a renovator. And I had had hip surgery the month before, and it was a 3-story walk up.
Hip surgery at 19.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Man, there's a lot of years of heavy impact to soccer, like a lot of slide tackles, a lot of kicking and stuff. Yeah, man, a lot of years of intensive training. But I'd had hip surgery a month before, pretty much as I bought it, and then by the time I settled, I was like hobbling up these 3 stories of stairs. But yeah, man, renovated that thing. Really started doing a lot of research after that. So I didn't really know that much before I bought it. But man, bought it, got myself a good deal, did a little renovation on it, and then I was sitting in the dentist one day. And there was this magazine on the table, API, back in the day, was Australian Property Investor. There was 3 key magazines. That was one of them. And I had never read a property mag before. I'm never early, right? This is my one massive fault in life is always being late. And,
fashionably late, but
maybe I don't know. I'm not as classily dressed as you.
No.
But man, I was this one time I was 10 minutes early and the dude was 10 minutes late, and so I had 20 minutes. I was reading over this magazine, went into the thing, and he called me in, and I go, mate, can I take this? You mind if I take this? And he's like, yeah, man, no worries at all. And sat out in the car after, read the thing back to front, drove straight to the news agency the next morning, bought it, and then saw there was 2 others. And then I kind of say they gave myself like a bachelor's of property because there's no podcast back then. It was just magazines. No. So I just like try to find all the magazines, any newspaper. I just read and consumed so much content. Yeah. And then yeah, pretty much from there, man, just started building my own strategy. You know, I started doing different things. My second deal was actually development because I always thought, everyone says, development's where you make money. Did the deal, took me out of the market for a little bit, but made a fair bit of cash, pulled it out of it, and then figured out my strategy during that process, and then started buying 2 a year, 4 a year, 10 a year, and just really just started scaling from there. So I was never a big income earner either. So I was literally a laborer on the farm. So I labored on the farm, played soccer semi-professionally, and then you know, I would work bar jobs, I would work scaffolding, that sort of stuff to get as much money as I could together, try and get deposits together, and increase my serviceability. And then I really figured out I just became obsessed with it. So I figured out what I really needed to do, which was buying strong growth locations, buy them below market value. I was forcing value through renovations, and then strong yields as well. So strong rental yields, because my income was low. I needed that yield to be able to keep moving forward, to keep the serviceability. And I just focused on that, and I just kept scaling that, repeating that. And then man, just kind of built from there. I had 20 properties. I hit 30 properties by 30. And then it's just like...
Was that your goal?
Yeah, it was. And then it's just... well, actually, my initial goal was 10 by 30. And then I hit 20. I was like, at 29, I was like, fuck, well, I've got to keep going here.
And then 4 years later, you just all of a sudden got 100 more.
Yeah, well, I think it's like, it's an effective scale, right?
It's a scale thing.
Yeah, man. And I think like the longer you do it, and obviously the last like 5 years of property in Australia, the growth has been crazy if you're in the right markets. So the ability to scale off the back of that, and I'm very much, I don't believe in holding property forever. So the property's done its thing, man. I sell it off, I bank the profit, I clear the debt, I move on. I treat my portfolio like a business.
So you haven't held everything from day one. No. You have been selling and buying again.
Yeah, 100%. And man, even this year, I'll probably go through a consolidation about 15 to 20 properties this year. And yeah, man, it's all, I just treat it like a business. Treat my portfolio like a business, cutthroat. If a deal's done what I think it's going to do, get rid of it, clear the debt, bank the profit, move on. So that's pretty much it, man, in like a, whatever that was, a 5-10 minute summary of sort of the journey today. But
so I think a lot of people get stuck at that sort of like first investment, maybe even that second or third one. Like what's the main jump someone needs to make to go from like, you know, that one investment, maybe it's owner occupied, to then that second and third one? Because I'm in that position. You know, I've had one, I've sold it and then bought another one. You know, that's got a bit of growth over the past 4 years, luckily. You know, I would be at crossroads of knowing where to purchase that second one and draw the equity down from. So how does someone get into that second and third sort of mindset?
Man, I think the biggest thing, there's two massive pieces to this, right? The first one is what you said there around primary residence. Okay, we'll dive into that in a second. The second one's education. And you mentioned before about School of Property. And we've obviously got our property podcast, Scouting Australia podcast as well. And man, I think the education piece is what so many people miss. And they make uneducated decisions. And it's not from, you know, and I'm not calling anyone out with it. They just don't have the understanding.
That's right.
And so like a lot of people go out and they buy their first property, whether it's a primary residence or an investment, but they don't actually have a strategy. So they just go, oh yeah, sweet, I'm going to buy property because that's what you do.
It's usually emotional, right?
Yeah, man. And people hear about blue chip, or they buy where they want to live, or they go, okay, what can I borrow? You can borrow $1 million. Okay, sweet. So I'll go buy a property for 1.2 million and borrow $1 million. And they just like, they don't understand the strategic piece that it takes to really excel. And I think my years that I didn't have enough cash and I had to really figure out the strategy, it was almost like that delayed piece of being able to actually purchase and purchase hard made me consume so much content to create that strategy. And I think like once you have the strategy, that's how you know you can keep moving forward. So at Australian Property Scout and with School of Property, like that's what so much of it is about, because building a big portfolio is all about education. Even if you're on a big income, you could be on $500,000 a year, you'll still cap out at some point. You need to understand how to really play the game. And so many people, even on $500,000 a year, they go, okay, I can buy something for $3 million. So I go buy an investment for $3 million, whatever. It's like, fuck, like you got to be so strategic with it as you build it out.
Yeah, people go for that high end straight away, and then they've got a massissive mortge, and it's costing them $50,000, $100,000 a year to hold it, fully. Even as an investment. The other piece of it is that owner occupier play that you said at the very start. Man, so many people, the great Australian dream and what the parents tell you, and oh, my friends have gone out and bought their own homes, so they think that's what you do. If you're genuinely serious about building a property portfolio and like scaling something well beyond where you probably should ever be able to afford to buy and build and to be able to generate, even from a primary residence perspective, if you go down a rent vesting strategy and you rent where you want to live, which would be significantly cheaper than buying there, and then you use that additional serviceability and that capital that you didn't go and pump into that to build a portfolio somewhere else, you can scale a significantly bigger portfolio and scale it hard and fast too. And I think that's a big thing. Like the primary residence is an anchor. And when people realize that, if they change that dynamic, that psyche in their mind of realizing it's an anchor and that the banks actually look at it as a liability, not an asset,
just to reiterate that, the banks look at your primary residence as a liability, not an asset, because it doesn't produce income. It costs you like a significant amount. You can't trade it quickly unless you fire sale it, which they're obviously wary of. So again, it's liability, not an asset. So it's kind of flipping that. Man, so much of what it takes to scale a portfolio is like the complete opposite to what everyone thinks about property.
So it's actually more mindset and a system, just like a business, like you said, is set up, because without a system, a business will never operate, right?
100%.
And there is a big stigma too of exactly what you said then, building portfolios and then renting, right? So like, I know yourself, you've got obviously the portfolio you have, and then you choose to rent where you want to live.
Yep.
So talk us through maybe like the misconception in the media and the public of why that's a better strategy versus owner occupy and, you know, in investing.
Yeah, for sure. So, man, like the house I live in on the Gold Coast, man, I'm on the canals. It's a massive house. I think it's like 6 bedroom, 4 bathroom, massive pool, canal front, all the rest of the stuff. I don't say that to brag. No. I say it to paint a picture of the size of this house and what it would be worth. It'd be worth about $5 million. Cost me $2,000 a week to rent it. It's $100,000 a year, right? Or just over 100. Call it $104,000 a year, $2,000 on the dot. If you were to buy that, $5 million, 20% deposit is $1 million.
Yep.
So you've just put $1 million in, plus your stamp duty.
10 times.
Plus your stamp duty, which is probably on that would be around $300,000. $200,000-300,000, something, I don't know the exact number.
Yeah.
But your mortgage now on a $4 million asset in your own name, man, would be about, I don't know, again, the exact number. It would be probably $300,000-400,000 a year. You know, so even call it $300,000 a year in expenses. So not only have you tipped in another, let's say $1.2-1.3 million just to get into it, but now your actual repayments are, let's say $200,000 more as well. If it was $300,000 a year in mortgage compared to $100,000 a year to rent it. So you've just done yourself out of $1.2-1.3 million worth of cash and $200,000 a year that would go towards servicing, which is probably $2 million worth of servicing. Or actually, no, it would be even more than that. It would probably be more like $3-4 million, because you're also going to get rental income on those properties as well.
Yeah.
So, man, like I've built a massive portfolio. I've got a huge amount of equity within it, but like it just, at the moment, I haven't finished building my portfolio to where I want to get it to. So it doesn't make sense yet to go and buy the primary residence in my own name, which would just anchor the rest of the portfolio journey. So
makes complete sense.
Yeah, man. It's one of those things. I think if you're serious about building a portfolio, that rent vesting strategy is so prudent, especially in cities like Sydney, you know, Gold Coast, Brisbane, that are very, very expensive to live. Anywhere blue chip, when the prices start to get significant, like very, very high, the rent to rent that property is actually so low in comparison to ownership. So it just still makes so much sense, man.
And you've also got the risk of that property potentially not even increasing and therefore not even drawing any equity out of, and you've got the interest to pay off too. So, you know, even if you are drawing equity out of it over time, you might be worse off. You know. So yeah, I completely get that.
But someone being able to also afford $300,000 a year in mortgage plus the 1.3 million to get into it versus just $100,000 a year to rent it.
That's $600,000 salary.
Yeah, seriously, man. Seriously,
100%.
Yeah. So, dude, it's just like it's so much more of an affordable thing to be able to do, and again, enable you to do so much more. Plus, still live the lifestyle you want, but maybe park that purchase for 10 years while you build out the portfolio. Then come back and buy it when you can afford to buy it easily and have already built out the portfolio as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've had Australian Property Scout. That's obviously your buyer's agent's wing. School of Property, you've just recently launched, and you know you're doing great things with that this year.
Thank you, mate.
That's obviously about the education, like what you said, and mindset is obviously a big shift here in order to get into that ability to understand the system and learn that, you know, and I think a lot of investors too, they'll only invest into the areas that they know. And then that's the position I'm in right now. I only know the Sydney market. So talk us through what you educate and what School of Property is about and how the customers can benefit, and I guess like how it becomes sort of more of a national perspective and not just where you live.
Yeah, man. So to give a 30-second, 60-second elevator pitch on School of Property, there's 13 modules within it. It goes all the way from fundamentals. If you know nothing about property, the fundamentals are there to give you, I think it's about 25, 30 lessons that are just the absolute basics to give you the overview of it. And then, man, it goes into the Trident formula, which is effectively understanding what properties you should put in your portfolio when. Then it goes into the strategy piece, so actually how to build out your strategy using the Trident formula. And then, man, all your creative lending, structuring, advanced investor strategies, location research, case studies. There's additional podcasts in there that are like a little bit too juicy to put on the open platforms and are literally hidden and put into there.
More educational stuff.
And how to build 60, 120, 250, 500,000 net passive. All that sort of stuff, man, is all like locked away in this vault where I just like I give everything. You know what I mean? Like everything's on the table. And it's funny. I did an investor story on Wednesday. We're recording this on Friday.
Yep.
I did an investor story on Wednesday, and I asked him about School of Property because he started talking about it. This is a client of mine who's been working with for 4 years. And he's like, it's funny because like, it's just that extra like 5 to 10% that's never ever discussed or unlocked that unlocks that completely different level.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
So it's like, man, that's the idea of it. It's kind of like unlocking that education piece that will go to the next level. And it's in my opinion, man, it allows people to understand the mastery piece of scaling a significant portfolio. You asked before around like what stops people from getting, going from 1 to, 4 or 10 or even 1 to 2 to 3 or whatever. It's understanding all these different pieces. And yeah, man, that's the way I built it out is it's in a way, if you start it from the very start, whether you're an advanced investor, if you're an advanced investor, maybe you skip the fundamentals. But then beyond that, man, anyone that's not a seriously advanced investor, start the fundamentals, work the whole way through. And the idea is just to build that complete knowledge base. So by the time you get to the end of it, you're like, okay, sweet, I know how to build a big portfolio.
Yeah. And like, you're not just focused on residential either, right? Like you've got a mixture of commercial and resi.
For sure.
I've just moved units, about to move office, and we're considering, potentially purchasing an office, but not right at this stage. But yeah, talk us through the strategy with commercial, because residential, getting your head around that's one thing. Commercial, that's a whole nother kettle of fish. What's the difference? How do you sort of search for those commercial hotspots? Yeah,
commercials, it is very, very different, man. You can make great capital growth from commercial as well. But for me, man, like I know so finitely how to make significant gains out of resi that I focus on resi for growth and I focus on commercial for cash flow. So I've got a significant number of cash flow deals in my portfolio that are residential.
So commercial is better for cash flow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's in your net yields, right? So often, especially at the moment, because we've seen so much growth in the residential markets, the cash flows are terrible, especially the net cash flows. And so, when you work out commercial assets, you're almost always working on a net yield basis.
Yep.
And so you might be sitting anywhere between a super blue chip, something like a Servo or a KFC or something like that might sit at like a 5% net return,
right?
Which is still very solid for that style of asset. But then you start moving into different spaces like industrial, warehousing, potentially medical centers, things like that. You might be sitting around about a 6% net, which is quite high. If you compare it to residential in a lot of areas, residential at the moment in Sydney, you might be sitting at like 1 to 2% net.
Yeah.
Like nothing, right? And even in like your other smaller cities, maybe you're sitting at 3-4% net.
Yeah, so Sydney's pretty capped out, right? Like I had Alex Phillips on, and he said like the growth that we've experienced over the past like 5 to 10 years, probably not going to experience that level of growth in the next 5 to 10 years.
For sure. Those affordability levels are absolutely cooked. But in a nutshell, man, commercial is all about the yield play. You can force value through things, you can force value through multiple different avenues and force that rental growth as well. But man, I love residential for growth. And then we like to transition our clients with the capital they make out of residential into commercial to get that really, really good, strong cash flow into the portfolio. And this is where it's like a hybrid mix of a portfolio as well, because people like to just focus on residential or even just focus on commercial, but you need the mix, because if you just focus on commercial, it's too capital intensive. Yeah. It's too expensive. You need too much of a deposit. You need to build it first in resi. But then if you think of resi for an entire portfolio, your net yields are too low. So you need that hybrid mix of the two to actually build a really robust portfolio that provides both.
Yeah, and obviously with the interest rate hikes, like having such a large portfolio, I think is probably again scaring people to jump into multi sort of portfolio strategies. How has that affected? And again, this is probably the answer of having a diversified portfolio. If you were just singled out in resi and had such a big portfolio in, say, a market like Sydney with the interest rate hike, how much would that impact,
Man, I had a client I had a mate that had bought a deal through another BA, like another buyer's agent, like a year or two before we became mates. And he was talking to me about it. And when interest rates were at like 2.5%, he was running like 30 grand a year negative. For every $1 million that you borrow, the interest rates went from 0.1% to 4.35%. So they went up by 4.25%. For every $1 million that you borrow, that means your interest repayments increased by $42,500.
Yeah, wow.
Just your interest. If you had principal on top, you're probably talking $65,000, $70,000 per million.
Per million.
And this asset was worth I think they'd paid, I don't know, 900 or something. It was worth up about $1 million now at that time. And so maybe for him, it was going to increase by another 30, 35,000. So his 30 grand a year negative was going to jump to say 60 grand a year negative on one asset.
Wow. So times up by 10 or 20.
Oh, dude, you couldn't hold it. You'd need a $1.5 million salary to be able to hold it.
Crazy.
And so, man, I don't believe in it as a strategy for one, that sort of blue chip, low yielding asset. I think you can still get significant growth out of lower, more affordable markets. Man, that still have better yields, but also great room for capital growth. I don't believe you need to hold that. But man, interest rates have decimated like markets like that. You would have to have held it for a very long period of time. But even then, man, like the way I look at it is it's like, if your yield is so low, what's actually the point of holding it, especially if the growth is now capped?
Yes.
So that's how I like to look at it. And again, you need that diversified mix.
Yeah.
Whether it is a diversified mix within residential and you're going for maybe some more blue collar rather than one or two big trophy blue chips, or you diversify into commercial stuff as well with that higher and better cash flow. But diversified portfolio is key.
Yeah, sounds like it. And the median price, because again, having such a big portfolio, people might assume that you've got, again, each property might be worth millions, but it's not the case. You've got lower end stuff and more entry level stuff. So what's been the median sort of price point that you're getting people into, and what are some hot spots at the moment across Australia?
Price points like now to get into? So price points now, man, like it's very hard to kind of get too many houses pretty much sub 500 grand.
Yeah.
5 to 700,000 for us right now seems to be the sweet spot.
Okay.
Man, it's kind of it's a bit of a mix across the board. When we were first entering, let's say like 5 years ago, like pre-COVID, there were plenty of markets. Like you could buy into Perth, you buy into Brisbane, buy into Adelaide for sub 300 grand.
Yeah.
20 Ks from
Brisbane's
the CBD.
booming.
Oh, dude, it's gone crazy, and it's going crazy. But there's still so much infrastructure there in the pipelines. Like how much further could it go? I had a property just for example. Actually, there's a couple in Brizzy and a couple in Adelaide that were almost this exact example. I bought them, some of them like very high 100s to very low 200s. So, man, like 190 to about 220 grand. And I'm taking them to market at the moment for circa 600,000.
Wow.
In 5 years.
Fuck.
So it's like, it shows, I bought them well, and the market was very undervalued at the time, but it shows like what you can sort of produce out of markets like that.
Yeah.
But those days are gone of being able to buy properties for circa 200 on the dot.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, there's still some opportunities in the 3s and 4s. But we see the sweet spot at the moment of like markets that have a little bit more affordability, sort of sitting between that 5 to 700,000.
Yeah.
Good rental yields, good houses, good affordability, so good room for capital growth. And yeah, man, we're sort of focusing on those style of deals.
What sort of regions in Australia? Obviously, Sydney being pretty capped as it is.
Yeah, man. In all reality, I think it's going to depend what happens with interest rates as well in the next little bit. There's a couple of big banks coming out, like NAB came out saying they see the interest rates dropping to about 2.5%.
Yeah.
Or like where the cash rate's
NAB is planning to pass on the most cuts out of all the big four, right? Yeah. Well, luckily I've gone with them. That was coincidental.
Mate, I'll tell you what, dude, like they're talking about it going from their chief economists and staff are calling it going from the cash rate. So what the RBA sets going from 4.35% down to around about 2.6%. Which is huge, man. It's almost a full 2%, which will have a massive impact on the market. So again, man, I think like your more affordable markets that we're sort of seeing getting closer to sort of caps, and when there was so much investment demand in there, I think we'll see a good transition of owner-occupiers come back into the market. So, man, cities like, I think Brisbane will keep running. I think Perth and Adelaide still a good run in the tank. I think there's a lot of regionals that still have good growth left in the tank as well. And Melbourne looks like it's finally shaping up. But there's a few anchors sort of on the cards for Melbourne as well. They had massive land tax reform. They had massive tenancy law changes. So there's a lot of things that have sort of changed there that have really pushed investors
They limited
away.
the urban sprawl, didn't they, in Melbourne? Or is that still the case?
Yeah, I mean, they're always chopping and changing, man. Like literally every 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, that was actually 10 years ago because I used to work in an education company that did property investing.
Okay.
That's how I met, we used to market a lot of coaches and stuff like that. But back then, I remember there was some sort of limit there with the urban sprawl in Melbourne. Yeah. It's probably changed a lot now.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's they're constantly changing, and the other thing as well is they need to bring more housing supply on the market. They changed the urban sprawl and then went to high density inner city living, and then the high density inner city became so oversupplied it wasn't funny. So then I think they've transitioned back out because there's just like there was thousands of apartments empty in the Melbourne CBD. So Docklands and all that sort of stuff, man. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Like literally towers like nearly empty. So it was crazy.
Really? Yeah. So they've stopped that.
Yeah.
Wow. Mate, from building such a big portfolio and going through meandering different strategies, I'm sure you've been hit with plenty of adversity, and not every property I'm sure is a win. What's been some of the biggest crossroads and challenges you've had in building such a big portfolio?
Man, the biggest thing for me was realistically probably lending.
Yeah.
I probably can't overstate enough how much of a low income earner that I genuinely was. The most I ever made out of PAYG after 12, 13 years as a PAYG income earner was it was just under 100 grand.
Yeah. So literally like what you've done, anyone can do, you know, man. From a medium point of view.
For sure. I mean, it's like, it might take a little bit longer, but I remember when I looked at it, when I was starting properly in the like 2011, 2012, and I remember looking back going, man, like the guys in the 2000s had it so much easier. I'm never going to be able to do it as well and all the rest of it. But man, there's always opportunity. You know, there's always opportunity. And I think it's definitely possible, but that lending issue that I had, and I hit a lot of serviceability caps. That was my biggest thing. I hit them a lot, man. And it was really figuring out how to navigate that, and having a great team around me was what it was all about. So again, the whole point of School of Property is showing people how to actually navigate it. All those lessons, man, they're literally, I've been investing now for just over 15 years. Yeah. So it's there's so much to learn about the game, man, to finesse it. Yeah. But the lending caps are probably the biggest thing that held me back. If we talk about probably like lessons within properties, or probably like the biggest like near misses. Yeah. In COVID, I'm always one to like roll the dice and go pretty hard. You know what I mean? Especially when I see opportunity.
You got to have risk appetite, right?
100%. Yeah. And so one of the last deals I bought in my 20s that made me hit the 30. It was this duplex site. And when I bought it, when I went under contract on it, it was about 6 months out from settlement. It was a late settlement. And man, when I bought it, lending was fine. And then when it was coming up to settle, it was settling in May 2020. And I bought it, I think, around about September, October 2019. Now, everyone will probably remember in March 2020 was when COVID probably hit and everything got cut. And so it was vacant land, right? And so no banks would lend on vacant land. So I had to strip equity out of like all my different deals, and I was already like pretty maxed, and I was like stripping equity out of everywhere because I had to settle this thing in cash, because I couldn't set, and I had a 20% deposit. I had like, I don't know, 60 grand or something down on this thing. Plus I'd paid stamp duties. So I would have had to walk away from, it was something like 70 grand or something. So I was like, I can't walk away from that. I need to make it work. And when you think about it, like 95 grand a year or something, your take home net at the end of a year is like 75 grand. So it was almost like a full year's of like net income that I would have had to have walked away from. So man, I was just like, I had to pull equity from everywhere to try and make this thing happen. I settled it in cash. I extended it 3 times, and I literally pulled it together like a couple of days before when they were fully going to terminate the contract, because they were trying to help me out. Like they knew what was going on, but then the developer after a while just goes, we need to clear, like they were getting worried about COVID as well. And like, we need to clear this thing.
Everyone was under the pressure.
Man, 100%. And then, I pulled it from everywhere to get this thing together, settled on it in cash. And then to put it in perspective, most people were getting money at around about 3% at the time. I got private lending to actually get the build done because I couldn't carry like because I pulled all my properties up. I had all of a sudden this extra cost associated with with settling this thing in cash. And it's vacant land, so there's no income. So I went private lending, man, and I think it was, from memory, it was about 13% that I was paying with no income coming in on it to get this build done. But I was like, I had no alternative. So,
so the most leverage you've probably been.
I was cutting it pretty fine. But what I found was like, when I went really hard to get all this equity out, I pretty much put it across the board, and my broker refinanced all these different lenders, and all of a sudden I had about, because we pushed to get everything out, to get anything done in time, because we didn't think we were going to make the cutoff. Then all of a sudden I had about $500,000 drop in of these equity releases that came in, which gave me a bit of surplus to carry the negative on the build. But then I was running the buyer's agency as well. This was my second year in the inn, and the market was dead. No one was willing to buy. And then I started having all these opportunities coming up where agents just like calling me, trying to get rid of deals, because in COVID, anyone that didn't need to sell took their properties off the market. Anyone that did need to sell, and especially areas like Brisbane, where its last boom was in 2007, and we're talking 2020, and people had bought properties off the plan for like 400, 450, and they were struggling. They couldn't sell them for 300. So I just started throwing out all these offers, because I was like, I spoke to my broker, and she's like, oh, well, you can do low doc lending if you really want to. But man, I started like throwing out all these offers because I had the cash in the kitty now, because I'd done all this refi that had, finally come together and dropped in my account. And, so I did the private lending, and then I just started buying all these deals that were just like ridiculously discounted because no one was around. So it was kind of like this weird like silver lining of where like I almost kind of almost lost it all, and it was going to cost me a lot. And then it kind of just like pivoted into this opportunity.
That breakthrough.
Yeah, this opportunity point that I had, and I bought about I think it was 11 properties that I bought in 2020 during that real hectic period. Yeah. And I was just like, fuck this. I'm just going to roll the dice here and just see what happens.
Yeah.
And it was probably the best decision I ever made doing that one. So.
And that's like another, I guess, lesson of not holding money in the bank, right?
Yeah.
Like the ability to be able to have that money sitting there and then to make those quick decisions and go out and reinvest that, you know, because money in the bank, it's, you're not, it's going to be worth less in every year that goes by.
Well, it was literally just sitting there in offset because I'd refinanced it out. So it was sitting there in offsetting, the cost of what I'd you talk about a loan, let's say it's a $400,000 loan and then you pull out $100,000. And if you sit that in offset, you don't actually pay for it. It's offsetting the cost of interest. So it's just sitting there doing nothing anyway. I was just like, well, if I can buy properties 20-25% below market, why wouldn't I do it? It's like, I may as well roll the dice. Like,
and you already knew sort of the system that you were generating at the time. Yeah, so perfect timing.
Yeah, man. So it was cool, man. It was probably like, it was a little bit, when I look back in hindsight, man, it was a pretty hectic period. I was willing to roll it as hard as I was.
Like it. Yeah.
But it paid off, man. I think sometimes like rolling the dice like that, like there's a reason why I'm at 100 plus properties now, and it was rolling the dice in times like that. It could have like a current affair. I remember a current affair, man. They were all over it, going, the market's going to drop by like 40%, and that's why people were fire selling. And I was just like, oh fuck, it's going to go one way or the other. Is this all going to go in the can, or this thing's going to take off? So
I had Theo Chambers on, and we were talking about how the fear mongering in the media plays such a big impact into the sentiment and value in property.
100%.
Not so much the interest rate cuts, but more so what the media is projecting out to the public. And that's an example of the media fear mongering and then therefore knee-jerk reactions happening. So like, how important is media in the process for this sort of stuff from a positive and negative point of view?
And I think this is where it's really important to sort of understand. I haven't watched the news in about 10 years.
Yeah, I fucking hate watching it too.
It's all a load of fucking shit.
It's
how do they get the biggest headline, get the stories, get you hooked, get you watching, get their ads played. That's where they make their money, right?
And even online, it's worse because it's clickbait. They have to get traffic in order to
100%.
Consume advertising in order to
get their downloads up so they can sell it for more, man. And it's getting even more vicious now because the margins are getting so much smaller and it's not really working.
More competitive.
So yeah, man, exactly. So mate, it's one of those things, man. With the media, like I tell everyone, if anyone ever brings a news article to me, I just go, mate, I don't even give a fuck what anyone's writing about it. Yeah, 100%, because it's just like, mate, they're throwing headlines out there to grab you. You know what I mean? If it's someone that I trust their opinion or I value their opinion, then it's like, okay, yeah, sweet. No, I'll read into it. Like, and maybe another commentator in the property space that I respect their opinion. But mainstream media, like what everyone has to understand is they literally get paid to get eyeballs on their articles.
That's it.
So how do we get as many eyeballs as we can on their articles? Throw out a huge headline that's like crazy. And so often it'll either be the market's crashing or the market's booming, Gen Zs will never be able to buy, all this sort of stuff. So it's like one way or the other. So you got to block that stuff out. And you need to be aware of what's happening, because it's the same as like interest rate cuts coming through, immediate sentiment change. And the reason for it is because they were still on a knife edge whether they needed to put it up another 1 or 2 hikes, right? Yeah. Because of inflation being sticky and not being able to get it in target band. Then it's dropped into target band twice. Two, I think it was 2 quarters in a row that they've had it now within target band that they were chasing. And month on month, it's still trending down. So it's doing its thing. Now you got all this sort of stuff going on with the tariffs and all the, all the rest of stuff. So the economy's slowing, so it's one of these things, man, that now we know that our rate cut's going to come in. Well, it's already happened. And now they're talking about such significant cuts coming through. You need to be aware of that sort of stuff as well, because you can't block it all out, but you've got to be aware of how that's going to impact the market.
You got to take it with a grain of salt. For
sure. But, and you've just got to understand the way the market sentiment will shift, because the market ultimately is driven by the herd. So you want to understand what's going to happen with the herd as early as possible, and you want to try and get in as quickly as you can before that shift comes through and before that market sentiment shift comes through, specifically with different markets. And then when you can understand that and you can get in early, that's where you get your biggest gains. Yeah, so if you look again, Brisbane in 2019, 2020, Adelaide, same time frame, Perth 2020, 2021, before the herd came in, like that's where we were buying in all those markets. Man, great deals, great discounts. Market hadn't grown in like 13, 14 years, super affordable. And then bang, herd comes in, doubles in 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, so it's look at the example before I gave of like the Adelaide and Brisbane deals, man. Some of my deals have tripled in 5 years. So it's really just,
as well.
Yeah. And that's what it all is, man. It's understanding where that market sentiment is going to impact what market, because it's not broad brush. It's not everywhere. Yeah, man, it's understanding how to utilize that to your advantage. So don't be swayed by it, but just understand what it can do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's such a good point. And yeah, something that I think a lot of people, we don't realize how constructed we are and controlled we are by what goes on around us. And there's so much content getting served to us every day. So we've got to be careful with what we consume.
One of the other things is your circle as well. So like,
for sure,
you know, you may block it out, but then what are your friends watching? What are your mum and dad watching? What's your missus or your
who's
boyfriend
in your
watching?
ear every day telling you what to do?
100%, because that will impact you as much, if not more, than the media. Because you watching it might be like, oh yeah, whatever. But then someone else saying it to you, like a trusted person that you know saying this stuff to you. Parents are the biggest one. Like if you wanted to build a portfolio, you wanted to keep your head above water and like not be stressing, you got to be very wary of your parents, because our parents, mine were exactly the same. I need to tell them, like, I don't need to hear what's in the media. I'm sweet. Because of that older generation. They used to sit in front of the telly at 6 o'clock every night and watch the news bulletins and all the rest of it. And it's such an impact on them. They're so used to it.
And I think the media back in the day probably was a little bit more legitimate than it is today. You know? So then they haven't probably realized how illegitimate it's become.
For sure.
You know?
For sure. Whereas it definitely wasn't as much of a vested interest. Whereas now it's like, how do we get those eyeballs?
That's right. Yeah, it's fucked it. So let's talk about the transition. I mean, you've got obviously a lot on your plate. You've got your podcast. You're doing a lot of personal branding. We'll get into that in a second as well. Australian Property Scout, and GMS has been helping School of Property over the past 6 to 12 months. And, you know, we sort of built up the system in order to, you know, get more sort of eyeballs on sort of that program. How's School of Property been and the results? How's it sort of showing at the moment?
It's good, man. It's a funny thing, I think, because we've never used an ad agency before. So Australian Property Scout, man, I was always front man. I'd go on potties. I'd write little articles here and there. We obviously have our own podcast. Without sounding arrogant here, we're very good at what we do. So we have a huge amount of repeat and referred business. So I've never advertised for Australian Property Scout. School of Property is different, because School of Property, it's almost like it's appealing to a different audience, which we've never done before. And I always said I'll never advertise. But then when you go into something like School of Property, it's completely different. And like a lot of your existing client base just buys it because it's your product. That's one thing. But then it's getting the eyeballs on it from a different source. I think, to be honest, man, like initially it's almost like a bit of a teething process for both sides as you're figuring it out. But especially probably for me, who was so vehemently against ads, you know what I mean? And it's like I was literally swore I'd never do it. And then I got this different beast, this different machine that needs that to sustain and to grow and scale as well. So I think, man, like especially that initial piece, which I think is natural, especially after talking to a lot of people, it's learning how it goes. And then I think we've definitely got it like a lot more dialed. It feels like, especially in the last 3 to 6 months, it's become a lot more dialed. And then I think it's just going through that process now of scaling those things to a different level. Because when we got it dialed at one point, I hit one of your boys up. I go, boys, it's going well. Let's 5x it. You know what I mean? But it fucking, like, I didn't realize the way it's like blows shit up when you just do that. You can't just, and this is me with my ignorance around that side. And you got to leaning on the people that know what they're doing with it to kind of take that structured and measured approach to build as well. So it's been eye-opening for me, man. It's been good. And it's funny, man, because like I very much work from like a gut feel perspective, and everyone else felt, to be frank, man, it feels like it's a very slimy sort of industry. Yeah, it is. If that makes sense, without being offensive. No, because like, I'm not throwing you in that category.
We try and say that we're not an ad agency because we're advisory first, right? Like a lot of ad agencies will execute only.
Yeah, right.
And they won't then talk you through, like they'll, you know, let's say for instance you work with an ad agency and they just execute. They don't know the understanding around how the full funnel approach works or how the business operates. So you're at the mercy of sending that ad agency the assets, and they're just going to run it irrespective of what landing page you have, what message you have, what website you have. So we're actually more advisors first, and then ads is the sort of byproduct of what amplifies in terms of what a brand is.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think like, when you came to us, you know, you had your consult page there. We turned that into more of a, you know, VSL education process. Which is no secret, but just that little simple pivot, you know, we could have taken what you had and it probably wouldn't have produced results, and you would have gone, these guys are fucking don't know what they're doing. So it's similar to like what School of Property is in terms of educating the market on investing. We do the same. There's a lot of education involved in digital marketing, and it's becoming so much more complex now that is probably the main thing to consider with when we bring brands on is is literally the guidance and then making sure that if we're getting assets from a brand and we know that that's not going to perform, then we have to be responsible for ensuring that we get that fixed.
Yeah, 100%. Man, I'll definitely say that's one of the big things that I think we've seen from the feedback perspective. And again, this is why it's like it's a
feedback loop.
Yeah, man. It's also like it's a work in progress because like. Man, even myself, I'm a busy dude. So like putting the time aside to then go, okay, like for you guys to feed us what you guys need, and then put the time aside, plan it, record it. And that's where I think like it's cool because I feel like we're hitting that stride now.
Yeah. And it takes time.
It does.
People think like, 3 months and then if it doesn't work, then that's it. Yeah. Like it's not the case. And maybe it was 10 years ago
when it wasn't saturated.
When it wasn't saturated. But
I get you.
Mate, it's all about brand development. Yeah. And that's why I always say advertising is the byproduct and will only highlight what goes into your business.
Interesting.
So if a new brand comes to me and they're like, I want to advertise and that is my only strategy to launch the business, I'm like, you're not even close to advertising yet.
Yep.
So it will only amplify what goes into the back end. You put so much work into your personal brand.
Yep.
Australian Property Scout, and obviously School of Property was already performing, that naturally, even though it took a bit of time, you were in a perfect position to be able to pivot and advertise. And that's the difference between someone putting the work in and amplifying using ads. But ads is not the solution to, I guess, a business that needs to go out there and market initially.
Yeah. Awareness and profile and everything.
That's it. Yeah.
I'm with you, man. And I think it's been the interesting thing to watch. And it is such a different thing for me as well. Like I said, never did it before. So kind of like learning all that stuff and seeing that sort of snowball start to build now.
Yeah.
It's actually exciting, man, because it's something that we're passionate about. And I really love like what I've built within it, man. It took me a long time to put it together, a long time to sort of plan it and put it all together. And I'm still adding more and more to it now as well. So I know how empowering it is for people. And that's cool now to finally sort of see it start to snowball into that ability to project it to more people as well.
Yeah, so you've got a machine, right? And that machine just needs fueling. Now let's talk about your personal brand, because I think like we're in an identity economy today.
Yes.
And I think like whether you're in service businesses, whether you're in e-commerce, obviously is a big one, a lot of founder-led stories with e-commerce. I feel no matter what industry you're in, if you're in a direct-to-consumer space, personal branding has become such a key element for SMEs and even for bigger businesses. Even look at Elon, with what he's doing. He's the face of the brand, and anything he does will dictate the performance of those companies.
Mate, look, Conor McGregor, The Rock, like they dropped that tequila company's $1 billion valuations in 12, 24 months. For sure, dude, I get it.
It's just like it's naive to think that if you're running a business or you're wanting to start a business, you either need a founder-led story or you need someone to tell that story. And that could be some sort of ambassador or, like the Inspired Unemployed with Better Beer. There needs to be that community-driven focus on some sort of personal story. So how important has it been with you and developing your personal story with your success?
With APS, it's been massive. So with Australian Property Scout, I think... I've always been a relatively gifted storyteller. I don't know where it's come from. I used to read a lot as a kid. So that train ride, that 2.5 hours each way every day. I used to love reading.
I had an 1.5 hour train trip and I used to read too. And I actually missed that. I don't read anymore.
Man, dude, I just brought it back in like 6 months ago. I was like having all this stuff going on. Like a lot of stuff was sort of going on and I really struggled to sleep. And I brought it back in because it switches my mind off from work, which is very hard for me to do. And then in 10 minutes, I'm zonked, doing that little bit of reading. So, but man, I used to love it. Like the ancient history, sort of like those medieval sort of fantasy stuff. I used to read that stuff on the way into school. I used to love it, man. And I think it built like a storytelling ability within me. My only two subjects that I actually loved at school was history and I actually enjoyed English. Like they were my two subjects that I was decent at.
English was my top as well.
Yeah, man. And I don't know.
Maths, I couldn't get it together.
Yeah, dude. Heading into year 11, I dropped it. My teacher's like, what are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? But it's just, I don't know. It's like, and it's funny, you put a dollar sign in front of anything and I'll work it out easy as, you know what I mean? But anything else, I was like, don't need it. But yeah, man, it's I think that storytelling piece and that personal branding perspective has been really, really strong for me and how I've sort of built what I've done, especially with Australian Property Scout, and in turn with Scouting Australia podcast as well. Obviously the Property Pod, and yeah, man, I think it's really bulletproofed us in an industry that has become saturated over the last, especially probably the last 3 to 4 years. It's become flooded, and I would I would not enjoy trying to come into the space now, or even in the last 12 to 24 months. It has genuinely become flooded. And it would be a really hard space to cut into. And thankfully, the work we've done over these last few years has built it to that next level. So I think, man, yeah, from that perspective, we've done really well, built a really loyal like cohort of clients that obviously keep returning for repeat business, and then obviously referring a lot of their friends and family.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, man, obviously building that. I don't have a huge social presence. I think I'm just about to hit 10K personally, and I think the business page is about 15K.
Yeah.
But man, looking at the numbers of pretty much all property pods on the market, I think we're the second highest behind. Yeah. There's only one, but they've been around for 15, 20 years. Another property podcast. I think we're second biggest behind those. So I kind of look at all these different sort of avenues, and I kind of look at them as almost like weapons in the arsenal.
Yeah.
And I like that array across the board rather than kind of just one or the other. I like having those different avenues. And I saw it again a few years ago, probably about 3 years ago. So we started the property podcast 2.5 years ago, and I started it because I could just see all these other guys coming in, flooding the market, and all the other property podcasts that weren't supposed to have vested interest just purely became like paid platform. Like, oh, you got to pay to come on. Buyers agents, you got to pay. They were charging like 15 to 20 grand for a performance, like for an appearance. Yeah. And I'm just like, this is wild. And I'm just like, nah, I want to create my own avenue. And now they've all dipped off because everyone can see it's a vested interest. It's just some bullshit story every time.
They've got the wrong intention with it. Yeah. You've got the right intention with it.
So, man, I think like that's been really important for us. And I think we've really built that longevity piece that we needed, and that you need in this game.
And you don't need, again, a misconception of like needing 100,000, 200,000 followers. Like I heard someone the other day say, like, you know, having a 10,000 follower base that is highly engaged. And there's other accounts out there that might have 350,000 followers, but have like
terrible
no engagement, right? So it doesn't take much for such a small community to be powerful within a market. And not only that, you've probably got a lot more people looking at your profile and engaging and doing that research than people are actually clicking that follow button. Yeah. So it's another tool to build that trust and authenticity. And I see it as like an omni-channel strategy. If people are looking to either buy through you or go through School of Property, they're going to be doing their research. Yep. And you need to be able to show up on Google. You need to show up on socials, and it just creates that extra touch point and value add in order for people to make that decision to build the trust.
I think the other big thing, man, is I really think it depends what industry you're in. And so this is why I agree with you completely, especially with a service-based industry where it's so high ticket. Because it's a high ticket game, you don't need 1 million people following you to make a margin to do okay. If I look back at myself 12 months ago, man, I probably had, 2,000-3,000 followers, and I posted 3 times a year.
Yeah. You
know what I mean? But like the business was still good. But like it wasn't like I really needed it. The business page was bigger. It might have been at 7,000 or 8,000 or something like that. But the podcast was large. And I mean, I think it's like realizing what industry you're in, and do you need volume or do you need a hyper-focused audience, a hyper-engaged audience? And this is where I've realized like it's good to have a big audience, but it's just like, how many people do you actually need, and how many people are actually able to pay the sort of money that you charge for your service? Whereas I think if you were like a low ticket, maybe you were selling SUPs or meal plans or something like that. Yeah, right. You probably want
high volume.
Yeah, you want 500,000. You want 1 million, because that's how that economy of scale is so relevant to the product that you're selling. But I think the really cool thing about probably both things that we do, and obviously I've got multiple things that we between School of Property and Australian Property Scout. I don't need this huge audience to be able to meet that demand or meet the sort of requirements or goals that we're chasing as well. So I think it's understanding what someone actually genuinely needs. And if you're in a niche that is a high ticket item, you don't need this crazy following. You said that hyper engaged.
No, that's right. Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head there. Like a good engaged, you don't need high followers, and then advertising will supplement going out to the mass market
for sure.
And that will keep people top of mind. In terms of, obviously you mentor a lot. School of Property is about you and your lessons and your education. At a young age, being that mentor, I'm sure you have to tap into others, when you reach crossroads. Like I've got a good amount of advisors sort of helping us steer our ship. We're 9 years in business now. We're moving into a new office and creating a whole another ecosystem, another agency, and, partnering with a few others. So I've had to put my hand up and find the right advisors to do that. Who are the people that you sort of lean in on?
Yeah, man. Without probably naming my coach, because I don't want him to get flooded.
That's okay.
But I actually absolutely love the coach I've been working with. I worked with a few mentors beforehand. I just found it wasn't that personable.
Yep.
But I found that when it was a specific person I started working with very closely, and we built quite a good friendship as well. Like we're good mates. He helps me with personal shit. I help him with personal shit at different times as well. We have a really, really good relationship, and he has been instrumental in what I've done. There's also been a lot of other people like that are quite close to me, but personally and professionally, that like I bounce a lot of stuff off as well. And man, like a lot of my growth has come from like that ability to be able to bounce off different people that have, really, really sort of understandings of how I tick. And also what our product is as well. Because sometimes, man, like, and I'll spend a lot of time almost like in the dungeon, for like 4 or 5 hours with binaural beats on and smashing magic minds and a couple of mods, you know what I mean? And just like making my way through it and just like working shit out and road mapping it all out. And sometimes those sessions are crazy, like what comes out of them. But then other times, man, you sit there and talk with other people and see what gets thrown back at you as well. So I think it's funny, man. I find it's one of those things that I never thought I would need one. But man, you even look at like your Michael Jordans and your, Kobe Bryant's and all these sorts of people, Cristiano Ronaldo's, like all the best sports people in the world, they still have coaches. They still have high performance coaches. They have, how to just become the best at everything. You know what I mean? And like become fully rounded. And I think like having those people in your arsenal that you can bounce things off and advise you and sometimes reality check you or humble check you, like bring you back to earth a little bit at times as well. Man, I think it's really, really important, dude. But I think it's got to be the right person.
For sure.
And the biggest thing, and this is with myself with property, one of the biggest things that I say to people is like, who are you taking advice from? Have they done what you want to do? And not have they done what you want to do after making $1 million in a buyer's agency or an advisory or whatever it is? Have they done what you want to do in the position that you're in? And that's the one thing I can look almost everyone in the eyes and say, I was making what you're making or less and built X amount of, X amount portfolio. So I think that's really important because yeah, man, like you need someone that's walking your path or has walked your path to show you how to do it. Yeah. Because if someone's making 300, 500 million bucks a year and you're making 80, they can't really show you how to do it because they haven't done it. You know, if they haven't done it. Yeah, for sure.
I agree with that for sure. Yeah. And I think like, look, your network is your net worth. And I think along the way without, not even just mentors, but having people there, that everyone I have on this podcast is through some form of connection and, the ability to be able to have and tap into that network. And I'm sure you're great at being able to go and meet new people and you never know where that ends up. And, even how we met through Jeff Jowett. Jeff Jowett was one of my first clients. So shout out Jeff Rowe.
Big Jeffy.
And like just people like that, and he's been instrumental in, paving the way for me in the beginning, early days, without him, I probably wouldn't be in this network we are in today. And also we wouldn't have met. So it's just like, that 1 degree of separation I think is really important and not just having a mentor, but having, like you said, good people around you is really important.
For sure, man. For sure. No, I couldn't agree more.
So the next 12 months, what's that look like for you? You're at 130 properties. What's next?
Yeah, man. I'm not really that sure, man. I'm a very goal-driven person, but portfolio-wise, dude, I just tackle things as they come. We got a really big team across the country of trades. Yep. So like most of the stuff that I buy is like houses that we wouldn't give to clients or that have crashed with clients or whatever, and like we can't make it work. It's too risky for a client to take on that deal. So I'll take on that deal, put X amount in for a renovation, knowing that I'll make X amount off the back of it as well. So man, I'll just keep pushing from that perspective. I want to keep growing School of Property. Yep. Australian Property Scout. Maybe a hyper focus on those two at the moment. I've also launched the Top 1% podcast where I'm interviewing a lot of like really high performers. And just like that's a bit of a passion project for me as well. But man, I just keep pushing forward, man. I set different goals as I go. And yeah, man, just sort of keep charging. But I'm just always looking to optimize and improve and create great results for people. Because I just, man, like if you create great results for people, they come back again and again, and they refer people. They're happy. They send people to you as well. So just keep pushing on like that, man.
Authenticity is the key, and if you're doing business authentically, then it's going to create sustainability and scalability. That's the one thing
for sure, man.
Before we finish up, I'd love to just get a bit of like insight into outside of everything you're doing. How do you switch off? What's some of the things that you do to sort of switch off from the busy life?
Man, the one personal purchase I've made for myself, I bought a farm out past Murwillumbah. I bought myself 45 acres out there because I'm originally a farm boy, so I like that bit of
going back to your roots.
Yeah, man, and like the Goldie, it's still pretty hectic these days. Like it's not as hectic as Sydney, but it's still pretty hectic. Yeah. And I like to have that where I can go and have that release, man. I train every day without fail. I've got motorbikes out there. I'm on the canals. So I've got jet skis on the canals. I got Got a couple of supercars. I love
toys.
driving those. Yeah, man, I love my toys. That's really my one thing that I sort of splurge on for myself is I do love that side of things, and that for me is a release. I've always been a bit of an adrenaline junkie as well. So like having that ability to take the cars out and do whatever sort of speeds, hit the track. A couple of our clients have got tracks as well, like up in Queensland. So I drive out there and put them on there and get a mad adrenaline hit. Take the super bike out, whatever it is, man. Like that's my way of switching off. Like when you do something that you have to be so hyper focused in, that's pretty much the only way that I can sort of get my brain to switch off. So I love it, man.
Mate, you got to enjoy the journey, right? It's not the destination.
For sure. Yeah. For sure, man.
Well, mate, thanks, Sam. Appreciate you coming on. Really looking forward to, what's next for you, and congratulations on all your success.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Mate, can I ask you one thing? I know we need to wrap.
Yeah.
You had the question you were going to ask me about what would I tell my 18-year-old self?
Oh, yeah. I
think you should ask that question because I think it's
Let's do that.
When Kel asked me that, I had like a bit of a revelation when she said
for sure.
So.
Let's do that. Yeah, we can cut that out.
Sorry, man. If that's all right. It'll be a couple of minutes.
So last but not least, Sam, what would, if you could retrospect yourself, look back at your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give you?
So they've asked this one, man, when you sort of sent some questions through for me to have a bit of a read, I had a laugh because the first thing that came to mind for me was buy crypto. If I was to tell myself one thing, I'd say, but it's a joke.
I answered the same thing actually when I got
Did you really?
One of the first podcasts. And that's how I got this question. I said buy Bitcoin.
Yeah. Sorry. That's what I meant. Buy Bitcoin, right? But I said it. I say it in complete jest because when I look back, man, so I'm 30. I'm actually 35 now. I'm not 34.
Okay.
I don't remember that.
Same as me. I'm 35.
There you go. Okay, sweet. So, mate, when I look back, it's a funny thing because what would you tell your younger self? And I look at where I'm at right now, and I've been through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of scar tissue in here. There's a lot of lessons, learnings, mistakes, failures, wins, all of it culminating into who I am now. So in all reality, man, if I was to rewind and or tell myself something, it would just be probably the only thing I would say is back yourself, but just fucking go, because man, I wouldn't change anything. I've had years of serious hardship, making fuck all money where I should have gone and I shouldn't have been working on the farm making 35 grand a year or 40 grand a year or whatever, where I was significantly better and I could have gone and been doing better things. But I know without a shadow of a doubt that if I was 5 years earlier into my wealth creation journey and I'd had the success now, if I had the success now at 30, or if I'd had the success I had at 30, 31, at 25, I would have fucked it all up.
Yeah.
I would have blown it all up. I wasn't mature enough.
Yes.
I was too much of a hothead. I was
It's a big lesson.
Man, so much. And so I look back now, and even though I'm 35 now, and everything I've achieved, man, I wouldn't change any of it because I know that if I'd had it earlier, I would not have been humble enough to be able to accept it and retain it is probably the biggest way, right? We talk about Jeffy Jowett, man, the success he had at all these different ages and blowing everything up. It's because he wasn't mature enough. And we've spoken about this before, he and I very, very candidly about it as well, man. The humbling 20s that I had, where I ate shit for 10 years, has set me up now to be able to have everything I have and not blow myself up at this point in life as well. So it's a funny thing, man. Everyone's got to embrace their journeys. And the simple fact is, if you've got scar tissue and if you fuck shit up and if you've blown shit up and if man, it's all creates who you are.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think, man, it's really, really important. I really wanted to pass that message on because a lot of people get eaten up by things they've done and mistakes they've made. And there's some things that are actually very raw to me, right now for the last few months that I've had as well. And man, it's all lessons in a reality check of where we're at in life and where everything you've done right now, where you are right now is a direct result of everything you've ever done in your life.
For sure.
And sometimes you just have to fucking own that and sleep in the bed that you've made, learn from your mistakes and move forward, man. So
it's such a good point. You got to have the toolkit to be able to process things, and there's certain challenges that you might not be able to overcome without that experience.
Yeah. And
maturity, I'm a big believer in that as well. There's certain moves I'm making that I wouldn't have been able to make 5 years ago. Yeah. Probably even this podcast, I probably wouldn't be able to do a good job of it if I had done it 5 years ago, because I've had to learn the experience and be surrounded by people and you know, learn those hardships to be able to relate. Otherwise I would be sitting here probably having more shallow conversations.
Yep.
So yeah, you're dead right. Trust the process, back yourself, and mate, everything happens for a reason, and you're in the place you're in right now for the right reason.
Man, and nothing's a loss. As long as you learn from it, nothing's a loss. And it might fucking hurt. It might be expensive. You know, but at the end of the day, man, nothing's a loss as long as you learn from it. It's
Absolutely.
just a lesson.
Mate, life's hard, but enjoy the journey.
That's it, man. Yeah. That's it. You got to embrace it.
Yeah. Well, cheers, Sam. Appreciate you having you on. Congratulations on all your success, and I'm looking forward to what the future holds for you.
Thanks, Blake. Appreciate it, buddy. Same to you.
Cheers.